My adoptive parents adopted me only for the money, but when I found out everything, I ran away with the help of my lawyer. My guardians took me in solely for financial benefits and attempted to prevent me from attending university, so I fled from their home and met my grandmother, who had been providing all the money for my care. Hi, I'm a 16-year-old girl turning 19 in a few days, currently staying with my friend because I recently left my adoptive guardian's residence to live with her. I no longer trust them. I have no other relatives, and technically they aren't my real family, especially after discovering the truth about them. They took me in when I was 10, almost 7 years ago, after my parents died in a terrible car accident. My parents had cut ties with their relatives, so there was no family to turn to. They attempted to reconnect with their families when I was born, but were turned away for unknown reasons. They always promised to explain when I was older, but they died before they could. My adoptive guardians, let's call them Mike and Sarah, were close friends with my parents. After the accident, they decided to adopt me. Since my parents were estranged from their families and their lawyer couldn't find any relatives willing to take me, I had no choice but to live with Mike and Sarah. The alternative was the foster care system, which seemed worse. Mike and Sarah seemed kind at first. I wasn't particularly close to them, but I knew living with them was better than the other options. Mike and Sarah had no children, so it made sense for me to stay with them. They legally adopted me and treated me decently for the first few years. They never showed the kind of love my parents did, and were never truly affectionate or caring. I missed my parents every day, but I accepted this new life and tried my best to fit into their family, adapt to their ways, and live by their rules. There was little to complain about in the early years, except for the constant yearning for my parents. Therapy was suggested, but they never took me because they thought it was all psychological nonsense that wouldn't help. Instead, they advised me to distract myself and focus on other things, their way of helping me deal with my grief. Though their advice often seemed insensitive, I learned to ignore it as I grew older. As I got older, Mike and Sarah became even more detached. They weren't very affectionate to begin with, and with time, they interacted with me less and less. By the time I was 14, I felt like I was living with strangers who didn't care about me at all, and it turned out my feelings were accurate. Living with people who didn't care about me, I always felt isolated and unwanted. I couldn't understand why they adopted me if they were just going to treat me like I didn't matter and prefer I wasn't around. Whenever I tried to discuss my feelings with them, they dismissed me, saying I was imagining things and they were always there for me. But now, knowing the truth, I realize it was all lies. I'll explain what happened recently, but first, let me share what transpired a few weeks ago. About a month ago, I finished my final exams and was on the brink of graduating high school. I had applied to several universities and started saving for college the previous year. I wasn't sure how I would cover all the expenses since I doubted my adoptive parents, Paul and Linda, would pay for my tuition. I hadn't discussed this with them, even though they had the means to support me. I wasn't confident they would be willing to help, and asking for money felt awkward given our lack of a real relationship. To save money, I took multiple part-time jobs after school, but I knew it wouldn't be enough for college. I always understood that I would eventually need to talk to them about my plans. I delayed the conversation for as long as possible, dreading the awkwardness. However, after graduating, I realized I couldn't put it off any longer, especially since I had received acceptance letters from a few universities. So 2 weeks ago, I decided to have the conversation, hoping to finally address my future. The discussion didn't go as planned. I didn't expect them to support me indefinitely. I just wanted to talk about my college plans. To achieve my goals, I needed to take out a student loan, and I would require their help as the only adults in my life who could assist me. Working through college was an option, but it would be incredibly stressful. I wanted to see if they had any plans or advice. When I brought up the topic, they were visibly surprised since we had never discussed it before. I took responsibility for not addressing it sooner. When I asked for their thoughts, they took a moment and then told me that I wasn't going to college. I was stunned. After I had already applied to several institutions, they said it was out of the question. They believed that college was too expensive and that I should stay home, work for a few more years, gain some real-life experience, and then maybe consider college when I could afford it myself. Not have to rely on anybody else. I was furious and told them they had no right to make such decisions. They responded by saying they had every right because I owed my life to them without their adoption. I would probably be homeless and never have experienced the comfort they provided. They claimed they practically owned me, and I had to listen to them. In a fit of anger, I foolishly mentioned that I had saved some money over the past few months and could leave their house, ensuring I never had to see them again. I told them I didn't need their favors and that if they despised me so much, they should never have adopted me in the first place. That infuriated them. They told me that since I had saved money, I could start repaying them for everything they had done for me. I was dumbfounded by their words and didn't know how to respond, so I walked away from the conversation. But they were serious. They told me I wouldn't be able to go to college because they would take the money I had saved. They insisted I had to repay them for everything, and though I knew I wasn't legally obligated, my pride wouldn't let me back down. I told them they could take whatever they wanted, and in the future, I would earn 100 times more and throw that money in their faces. Since then, we haven't spoken, and they seem pleased with their actions. They forbade me from attending college and decided to seize the money I had saved. I was at a loss for what to do next. I didn't want to give up on my opportunity, but I also didn't want to beg for money. So I decided to investigate why they had been treating me this way. For years, I never questioned their behavior, but now I needed to understand their motives. For the first few days, I brainstormed my next steps. I checked all their social media accounts, but neither Tim nor Jane were active online. I realized this was a dead end, but didn't know where else to turn. I considered reaching out to some of their friends, but that seemed too risky. They might not believe me and could inform Tim and Jane, which I wanted to avoid. Frustrated, I decided to start at the beginning and speak to my parents' lawyer who had handled all the adoption details and paperwork. And Mike were in the process of taking me in. I don't know why, but I had a gut feeling that it would lead me somewhere, and bingo, it did. It took a lot of effort to find the contact number of that lawyer, but I remembered him as Uncle James, a fake name. I had interacted with him a lot after my parents passed away. Slowly, I had lost touch with him, but I recalled his name and appearance. Through the power of the internet, I found his email address and sent him a message. I didn't include many details, I just mentioned that I had something important to discuss and gave him my number so he could call me. 2 days later, I finally received a call from him. He sounded quite puzzled about why I was reaching out after so many years. I told him everything that had been happening. I had been holding this in for a long time, so it was necessary to get it all out in the open. I explained how Mike and Sarah had been treating me and asked if there was anything I needed to know because their behavior was confusing and strange. I was sure there was more to it than what I was being told, and I wanted to uncover the truth. I'm so glad I did because that's how I discovered the real reason why Mike and Sarah had adopted me in the first place. It took some convincing, but I finally got through to my parents' lawyer. He broke his promise to those he had made it to and told me the truth. He confirmed that my parents had been cut off by their families, who rejected the offer to adopt me after my parents died, wanting no contact with me. However, my grandmother on my father's side felt guilty and reached out to the lawyer privately, offering to support me financially for life. She asked him to find a family to take me in, promising to cover all my expenses and send a substantial check to the adopting family as an incentive. She wanted someone to take care of me until I was an adult. She assured him that she would support me financially until I turned 19 and went to college, after which the funds would be sent directly to my account, eliminating the need for my adoptive parents as intermediaries. Mike and Sarah knew about this arrangement since the lawyer had informed them, which was the real reason they adopted me for the child support money my grandmother was sending. She also had a clause stating that her identity must remain a secret to avoid any contact with me, as her family did not want any connection with me. Now, everything makes so much sense. More sense now that I know what Mike and Sarah were really up to. After discovering the truth, I decided to leave their house immediately. I couldn't continue living with them any longer. Since then, I've been staying with a friend and trying to convince the lawyer to put me in touch with my grandmother because I believe she is my way out of this mess. I understand that the lawyer wasn't supposed to reveal the truth, breaching the contract that everyone had signed, but at this point, I don't care about any contracts. I need to go to college and fix my life, and my grandmother is the key to that. So, I'm desperately trying to get the lawyer to help me contact her. I made the mistake of informing Mike and Sarah after I left, letting them know that I had discovered the truth. I told them I would never return and they would no longer be living off the money sent for my expenses, which they had been doing all along. They need to return the money they took from me because they hadn't spent a single dollar on me since I started living with them. I don't owe them anything. They think I'm being selfish because they believe I owe my life to them. Even after learning the truth, they insist they adopted me out of the goodness of their hearts and the monthly checks were just a bonus. They claim they would have adopted me regardless of the money, so they see me as self-centered and greedy for leaving. They say I should come back because they know what's best for me and I should be grateful. They believe I used them to get ahead in life, and without them, I would have ended up in the foster system. I doubt their narrative. Even if I had gone into the foster system, it would have been better than being treated like this. Saying that feels harsh, but I don't care anymore. The only reason I'm questioning myself is because of the mixed emotions I'm experiencing, making it hard to trust my judgment. I left my adoptive parents after realizing they only took me in because my grandmother was sending child support money. Update 1. Hi everyone, thank you for the overwhelming response to my post. I'm still living with my friend. It's been almost 8 days since I left Mike and Sarah's house, which never felt like home. Moving on, I've decided to block them and focus on my future. I still haven't heard back from my grandmother. The lawyer keeps telling me she doesn't want to contact me because she's scared. I have no idea what she's afraid of. It's frustrating that she was willing to support me financially for 18 years, but now fears standing up for me and taking me in. I don't understand what my parents did to anger their families to the point of being afraid to interact with me. It's a huge mess right now, and I'm fortunate my friend is letting me stay with her and being so supportive. Mike and Sarah are still trying to reach out to me, probably to continue using me as their cash cow for a few more years, as they initially planned. I can't let that happen. Believe they still think I will come back to them after everything I have discovered. That is never going to happen, so they can stop trying to manipulate my friends and their parents, telling them I'm crazy just to get me kicked out so I would have no choice but to return. These ridiculous tactics won't work because my friends' parents are reasonable people who know the truth. They trust me completely and will never believe what Mike and Sarah say about me. During this time, I miss my real parents even more, knowing that if they were alive, I wouldn't have to deal with any of this. My life would be as straightforward as anyone else's. Unfortunately, here I am, stuck in this bizarre situation with no clear idea of how to handle this insanity. My only hope now is to reconnect with my grandmother and have her stand up for me when it really counts. I don't know what my parents did, and honestly, I'm not interested in finding out right now. I just want what's best for my future. Regardless of what happened in the past, I hope my grandmother reaches out and accepts me instead of continuing to push me away, as she has for the last 19 years. Update 2. Hello, it's been 2 weeks since I started living with my friend. She and her parents have told me I can stay as long as I need until this whole mess is sorted out, or at least until I can go to college. I'm very grateful for their support, so at least I don't have to worry about having a place to live. A couple of days ago, I finally found out why my grandparents don't want to speak to me and why my parents' families are angry with them. It's not a pleasant reason, but it makes some sense. My father was actually involved with my aunt before he married my mother. It's crazy because I didn't even know my mother had a younger sister. My dad was supposed to marry my aunt, but during the wedding preparations, my parents started developing feelings for each other. 3 days before the wedding, they eloped, causing a huge scandal in their small town where everyone knew everyone. It left my aunt devastated. She turned to alcohol after the incident and has been able to stop since. Her alcoholism ruined her chances of having a good life. She now relies on her parents' money, having no job, career, prospects, or family. She's just a shadow of her former self. I understand why her family would not want anything to do with my parents after that. It wasn't a nice thing to do, but even so, I think it's harsh that they've also rejected me. My parents are gone now, and family is supposed to be something you can count on. Their refusal to take me in and treat me as one of their own feels incredibly harsh. Admit that and understand why they would not want any contact with my parents after that, but honestly, I need them right now. My parents' lawyer told me this story and said this is why my grandmother doesn't want to get back in touch with me. If she does, it will bring up old wounds for both families. They don't want to relive the time when my parents eloped, and my return would definitely stir up memories. To avoid the drama, she has been avoiding me, but I don't think it's okay anymore. I need help now, and I believe they shouldn't take out their grievances on me. I shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of my parents' actions. I'm not sure if my demands are fair, but I can't deal with this alone anymore. Update 3. Hi everyone, I have a lot to share right now. For starters, I am living with my grandmother. It's been almost a month since my last update. I kept trying to convince my parents' lawyer to give me her number, just for a single conversation. 1 hour of her time was all I asked for. Eventually, he managed to persuade her to agree to speak with me. In that hour, I convinced her that I genuinely needed her help and wanted the family to accept me. I explained that I knew what my parents did was wrong, but I had no part in it and didn't even know about it until recently. It wasn't fair to punish me for their actions. I also told her about how Mike and Sarah had been treating me. That caught her attention because she didn't believe they were capable of such behavior. She had met them before, allowing them to adopt me, and had stayed in touch over the past 19 years, thinking they were kind and decent people. After hearing my story, she said she would talk to the family and see what she could do. After 2 weeks, she informed me that the family was ready to take me back. It took a lot of convincing, but once they learned about how I had been treated and everything I had gone through, they decided to forgive what happened with my parents. They acknowledged that the past was the past, and my suffering shouldn't continue because of their shame. So now, I am living with my grandmother. My grandfather is slowly coming around to accept me. In a few days, I will meet my mother's side of the family, who are still skeptical because of what my aunt went through. I feel bad for my aunt, and am giving them space right now since they need it. It's a significant step that they have at least accepted me, and we can sort things out later. Mike and Sarah are now out of the picture. They have to return the money they took from me because my grandmother threatened to sue them if they didn't comply, given their mistreatment of me, which is definitely grounds for a lawsuit. The best news is that I'm starting college in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited that things are finally falling into place. I am incredibly happy. Update 4. Hey everyone, I have another update for you all. It's been about 3 months since I moved in with my grandmother, and life has taken a complete turn for the better. I'm finally feeling like I belong somewhere, and that I'm truly part of a family. Starting college was a whirlwind of emotions, but it's been an amazing experience. I'm studying psychology, which has always been a passion of mine. I guess growing up with Mike and Sarah gave me plenty of first-hand experience with complicated human behavior. The campus is beautiful, and I've made some great friends who have been supportive and understanding of my background. It's refreshing to be around people who care about me for who I am, not for the money attached to me. As for my family, things have been progressing steadily. My grandmother has been wonderful, and we've grown incredibly close. She's been my rock through all of this, and I'm grateful every day for her support. My grandfather has been slower to warm up, but I can see him making an effort. We've started having weekly dinners together, and it's nice to see him trying to bridge the gap that years of estrangement have caused. I finally met my mother's side of the family a few weeks ago. It was awkward at first, but it went better than I expected. My aunt, who was most affected by my parents' actions, was there too. She looked at me with so much pain in her eyes, and I could see how deeply she was hurt by the past. I approached her carefully, expressing my understanding of her feelings and my hope that we could find a way to move forward together. It wasn't easy, but she agreed to try. One of the most surprising developments came from my grandmother's insistence on resolving everything legally with Mike and Sarah. They ended up having to pay back the money they had taken from me, which was a significant amount. The threat of a lawsuit was enough to make them comply without a drawn-out legal battle. That money has now been put into a trust fund for my college expenses and future needs, ensuring I won't have to worry about financial stability for a while. But here's where the story takes an unexpected twist. About a month ago, while I was settling into my new life and focusing on school, I received a message from a woman claiming to be my biological aunt from my mother's side. At first, I was skeptical. With everything that had happened, I didn't know if I could trust this sudden outreach. However, after some cautious conversations and verification from my grandmother, it turned out to be true. This aunt had been living abroad and had only recently learned about my existence and what had happened to my parents. She was eager to reconnect and learn about me, and I was equally curious about her. We arranged a meeting, and it was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. She shared stories about my mother and their childhood, giving me glimpses of the family history that had been hidden from me for so long. It was like opening a treasure chest of memories and understanding parts of myself I never knew existed. The most astonishing part of this new connection was learning about my aunt's influence and resources. She's a successful entrepreneur and has connections in various industries. She offered to mentor me and help guide me through my college years and beyond. This unexpected support has opened new doors for my future, and I feel incredibly lucky to have her in my life. With every day that passes, I feel more grounded and optimistic about the future. My journey has been filled with ups and downs, but I'm finally at a place where I can breathe easy and focus on my goals. The pain of the past is still there, but it's becoming a part of my story rather than the defining chapter. Thank you all for the support and encouragement. I'll keep updating as things progress, but for now, I'm happy to say that life is looking up, and I'm excited to see where this new path will take me.